Hey everybody, it's Joel Williams, and I've got my good friend Chase Swanson here today. Instead of the old Chase Elleby, we've got the better looking version of the Chase here today. So what we want to do today is talk about something that's very important and often overlooked in the legal profession, and a lot of professions for that, and that is mental health and how it plays into our clients' lives, their recovery. And also, we're going to transition into why it's so important for lawyers to maintain their mental health so that we can adequately serve our clients. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you a little bit about Chase. So Chase is a partner at Swanson. Their main office is in Marietta, Georgia, which is, 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road from here. So Chase and I have known each other for a good while. And the reason I wanted to bring him in today is that he's younger than me, but he's been around long enough. You can tell by the gray hairs on his beard that he's got enough experience to talk about this. He's seen clients struggle with mental health issues. He's seen other lawyers and our peers struggle with mental health issues and what kind of damage that can cause to them, as well as their clients and all of that. But I've always been real impressed with the way that Chase puts in effort to maintain his own mental health, the investment that he puts in his clients' lives to help them maintain their mental health. So we wanted to come in today and just talk a little bit about that. So the first question that I've got for you, Chase, is tell me a little bit about what you've observed personally with your clients and how, just because they're going to hire us. Oh, by the way, Chase does personal injury just like we do. But they're calling you when they're in physical pain. But there's also a mental aspect of that goes along with dealing with the physical pain and how that struggle can affect their recovery and all that. So just talk a little bit about how you see that in your clients and how you try to help them deal with it.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
As Joel said, this is something that I don't think gets quite enough attention throughout a case. A lot of times when people come to us, the first thing, the easiest thing, and most objectively common thing for a lawyer or someone outside observer to look at is the physical attributes of the things that someone's going through.
Yeah.
Their shoulder hurts, the neck hurts, they've got a headache, those kinds of things. The same kinds of things that perhaps their physician would be looking at. But what we see as we get to know our clients more thoroughly throughout the process, and there's a relationship that has to be built there. Most of our clients don't know us on that level just yet. But as we get to know them, as our staff get to know them, then we come to really realize the way in which whatever incident has led them to us is affecting their lives. That can happen both where their physical injuries are having a tangential effect on other things that are stressors. For example, having to take off time from work and maybe being limited in the income, or if it's things just like being unable to participate in activities with their kids that they normally would be able to participate in, things that just ultimately cause them some additional stress. And those things all just start to spiral and swirl around and can build up. And if there's not a good way for them to deal with those things, then we can start to see them creating some real problems.
Yeah. And, sometimes what I see with our clients is, and I'm sure you see this as well, everybody tends to have their own way of dealing with it, right? So, for instance, I was raised to, suck it up, don't complain, whatever. And a lot of people are, and even if you're not raised that way, sometimes people feel that way. And with the risk of sounding politically incorrect, like men are horrible about that. They don't want to show weakness. If your bone's poking out of your arm, yeah, that hurts. Everybody gets it, but nobody really wants to admit, hey, I'm struggling up here. I'm having a hard time mentally dealing with all the stressors that you just talked about. And we see that where it affects their ability to recover from their physical injuries because maybe they miss doctor's appointments or they don't want to go see a certain doctor because they don't want to admit that they're struggling with this particular thing. So you mentioned one thing that I think is super important that a lot of lawyers miss when it comes to being a counselor and in addition to being a lawyer, and that is listening and helping clients walk through the recovery process, and when necessary, helping them overcome the mental hurdle of, one, just being willing to see a mental health professional, a counselor, whatever, and then two, sometimes helping them find somebody who works with people who have been injured, who may have PTSD or struggle with specific anxieties, because some things I think that our clients deal with that don't necessarily, that people who haven't been injured and are involved in a legal case deal with, relate specifically to the case. So you want to talk about some of the stresses and anxieties that are dealt with from a legal perspective and that come along with a case, that are in addition to just dealing with the pain and all of that.
Yeah, and let me tag on to that. One thing that I think it's important for folks to remember is, and these are two things that we have sort of taken on internally. When we meet with clients, one of the things that I'll remind them is, and this, you're right, it does maybe happen more often with men, but I've seen plenty of women that just did not want to sound like they were complaining.
Yeah.
And so the way I always phrase it gets them to smile, loosen up a little bit, is to tell them, I say, leave your cape at home. You don't have to be Superman or Superwoman right now. Now is the time when you need to be prepared to be open with your physicians, be okay with talking with them, even though you may be going to see a neurologist about your ongoing headaches. Talk to them about these other things that you're dealing with, because I always, although you and I deal with a lot of different types of medical professionals and we're fairly knowledgeable about a lot of things, we're not medical professionals. And my wife's a physical therapist, as you know, and she likes to remind me that I'm not a medical professional.
That's right.
And she's right. And so what I like to remind my clients is that you need to be open, you need to be honest, for a whole bunch of reasons, but primarily because if you're not, then your medical professionals that you do have can't help you. The second thing that we've adopted is we really take some time to help remind our staff that who spend a lot of time with and get to know our clients to a large degree, helping to remember it's so easy when you're working through these cases to forget that these are real people that have real things going on. And so we have to, our job is specifically to help this individual through this very, very difficult time. Might be one of the most challenging times of their lives. Mm-hmm. And so to the extent that we can all internally remind ourselves of that and be cognizant of that, I think that that's the way that we can best serve our clients.
Yeah, I think so. And to build that trust is huge, I think, because that's one thing that we preach a lot, and one reason that we have built our law firm the way we have, not the mega firms. And I think y'all have a similar mindset of you got to have enough cases to run your business, but you don't want to have so much that you can't develop that trust and relationship with your clients, because sometimes the mental health struggles that they have bleed over from their personal lives into the case, and perhaps they should, right? Because anytime you have a case, whether you're charged with a crime, you're dealing with a family law issue, an estate, dispute, or a personal injury, there's uncertainty. There's no guarantees in the law, so we don't know exactly how things are going to play out. We have a good idea. We can tell you, well, based on these other cases we've handled in the past that are similar to yours, this is probably about what's going to happen. And sometimes we're right, and sometimes a jury says, no, you're wrong. We see it differently, right? So there's no guarantees, but there's stress and anxiety that comes along with that. And then when you compound that on top of just the depression, the anxiety, the struggles with how am I going to provide for my family, and I think that's, speaking of women struggling with admitting a perceived weakness, it's very similar to that. Like, they're protectors. They're, especially mothers, they're they don't want to admit weakness because they got to be strong to be there for their children, to be there for their husband sometimes and other people. And so we all have to overcome this mental hurdle of acknowledging that mental health is a real thing just as much as physical health is. And it's not a sign of weakness to admit that you're struggling with something, because I view it as a sign of strength, because you have to be able and willing to acknowledge that and admit it. But some things that we have found is there's certainly different levels of degree of struggle when it comes to maintaining mental health with clients. Some don't always require the help of a counselor or psychologist or psychiatrist or anything. Sometimes we can help them by, and I've kind of incorporated this from what I've seen medical professionals do, is setting those, and I bet your wife has done this too in physical therapy, setting those goals that are measurable and obtainable and reachable, right? So if someone cannot, I don't know, what's a good example? Somebody enjoys running and they usually go out and run half marathons. Well, they get in a car wreck or something and now they are doing good to walk around the block. Well, just taking that active role with them and calling every now and then and saying, hey, Chase, I know running's difficult for you right now, just checking in to see how things are coming. And maybe you're only walking around the block one time now, but you can encourage them, hey, you think you might be able to do it, go around 2 times, or instead of walking it, just slowly jog it, and then check back in with them and congratulate them and encourage them when they meet those small goals. And that will help develop that trust relationship, I think, so that when there is uncertainty in the case, they know, hey, Chase has got this. He's handling this. I don't have to worry about that. So when we do that, we're able to take that most of the time, not all the time, but we can help alleviate some of that case stress from the client's life so that they can focus on their physical recovery, knowing that we've got the legal case handled. But, one thing that I often think about is how personal injury lawyers view damages in cases.
Yep.
Because it's very easy to get all consumed with, well, what's this case worth? What amount of dollars can I get my client? And that's certainly part of our job, is to maximize the recovery that our financial recovery that our clients get. But it's not always the most important thing, right? The most important thing in my mind is always the well-being of the client. So, but some lawyers get caught up in, well, if the client's struggling, if they're doing all these things, they're just tearing their mental health apart, it's going to make the case so valuable because I can go in and talk to a judge or a jury or a mediator or an insurance adjuster about, well, look at all these struggles. What I see is when that lawyer is doing that and they're taking that active role, or they're not taking that active role in their client's mental health.
In a positive way.
In a positive way, yeah, exactly. They're just kind of an observer going, oh, check this box, add that to the damages and all that. It doesn't help the client as much. But sometimes I think lawyers can have a misconception about whether that actually helps increase the monetary value of a case. Because, well, and let me just ask you this. So in an example, if you're trying to talk about mental health, pain and suffering type damages to a jury, is it going to be easier for you to do that if you've taken an active role in the client's case, or whether you've just been a box checker and go, oh, well, so-and-so struggles, they can't go to church, they can't go running, they can't go fishing, whatever.
Right, yeah, I mean, 2 comments on that. First is, I think that it's actually our job as lawyers representing injured people to understand these components of their lives. And if all we're doing is being observers and not participating in a way that we can actually understand and know the specific things that they're going through, then I think that we're not being as complete and holistic of a lawyer as we can be, a representative of these folks as we can be. And so I think that we have an obligation to have a better understanding of those things, so that if at some point we need to be able to convey that to other people, then we actually know it and can feel it and internalize it and sort of be there with them on that. The other thing I would say on that is that when it comes to, maybe this is specific to personal injury law, but when it comes to valuing damages, I actually think that both as it pertains to physical damages and mental damages, that people who have taken an initiative and then gotten better, I think actually works better for their cases in the beginning, to begin with. So whether it's them having put forth the effort to recover from a knee surgery and now they're better, or they've recognized a particular mental health issue. Maybe they're just severely depressed by the limitations on their activities and they've taken the steps to improve upon that. I think that everyone cheers for someone who wants to help themselves. But the problem is, the challenge is, sometimes it's really hard to take that first step to want to help yourself. And I think that lawyers are uniquely positioned to be able to help people struggling with those challenges in this way. Sometimes it can be really hard to talk to some of our best friends even about some mental health issues that we're dealing with. Sometimes people that are so close to us, it's almost like, man, can I really admit to them that I'm dealing with this? And at the same time, maybe going to see a therapist or a psychologist seems like so overwhelming. I can't possibly admit to myself that that's where I am. But that's where we maybe can fill in the cracks a little bit. I'll give an example. I had a client who called me not too long ago. His case is already resolved, and I haven't talked to him in a few months, but he's dealing with some issues at home and is contemplating getting divorced. And he was calling me to get some guidance, or he sort of framed it as in need of a referral. But we sat and talked for half an hour, just sort of talking through things that had nothing to do with personal injury or the legal ramifications of anything. He just needed to have somebody else that wasn't so close to him that he felt like he couldn't be as open, but who he clearly had developed. We had developed that relationship to be able to have that conversation on a maybe a more objective level, I guess you could say. In some ways, that's the role that we can play with folks. I think that being able to be outside of their situation, uniquely positions us to be able to hear them, think critically and objectively, and then be a sounding board for them to think through some of those issues.
Yeah, and the only reason he was able to do that is because of the level of trust you had built up with him during the case that you represented him for. And him knowing that you were going to be willing to have that conversation and listen in an empathetic way. And so we're going to transition over into to lawyers and our mental health, but I think because that's obviously something we have to address if we ever expect to adequately and efficiently and appropriately help our clients deal with theirs. But I think, and I'm speaking to lawyers now, it's something that you're not taught in law school. It's something that nobody really teaches you how to do it unless you've had a really good mentor. But it really goes back to the golden rule. Like, we need to treat people the way that we want to be treated. So if we were in their shoes and we were struggling with these issues, can we come to our lawyer and have that conversation and figure out ways to appropriately deal with it? Because, like Chase said, people for the case respect others who take steps to try to get better. They're not always successful in that journey, but just making the effort and working hard to try to get better, I think, gains the respect of the jury. And at least in the state of Georgia, where we're at, you actually have a legal duty to do that. And the judge is going to charge the jury, if you have to go to trial, on what we call mitigation of damages, which means you have a duty to do everything possible to try to lessen your damages. So there's a legal benefit for it, and there's just a morality and being a good person benefit to it, and just helping somebody that has trusted you with what could be one of the most traumatic or important things in their entire life. So,
and one thing I'll say about focusing on our own mental health and being aware of those around us in the legal profession is that I don't think that we need to necessarily think. I think that we talk a lot about framing, right, in what we do. I think it's
by framing, you means framing issues, framing the case, so that somebody sees it the way that we see it.
Right. But I think that we maybe need to rethink how we frame mental health, particularly for lawyers, because I don't think that this is just an issue where we say, oh, this is these are the reasons why being a lawyer is stressful, and we're going to go through some of those in a minute. But I think it's also important to just think about how life is stressful, and regardless of what you do, and in particular if you're in high stress type environments like we find ourselves in or can find ourselves in, then we've got to think about ways of just being healthy. It's not this isn't about recognizing I have a problem. I think this is just an environment that we're all in to some degree or another. We all find ourselves in stressful environments, and if we just leave our capes on, like I said earlier, or want to cover our eyes, cover our ears to the idea that these things are happening around us and that they're having an impact on ourselves, on our psyche, then we're doing a disservice not only to our clients but to our families, to our friends, all those that we care about and that care about us. And so I think that we just need to see it more, just like you think of taking an extra walk each week to stay more physically active, that I think that we need to do a better job of just seeing this is just a part of being a healthy person.
Yeah, it's something that if you're going to choose this career path, that you're going to have to deal with at some point. And it really even starts in law school. Like, law schools, I think, do a good job of putting you in high pressure situations that may cause you anxiety and all that, but they do a horrible job of teaching you coping mechanisms to deal with that. They just kind of put you in the situation, and you either deal with it in a healthy manner, or you go out and drink a fifth of liquor, or
you drop out. It can be seen as a little bit of a filter for some schools.
They kind of leave you on your own to figure out how to deal with it, right? So it's like you either succeed or you don't, and so what? Well, so what's not good enough. Like, if you are a law professor, or if you are a dean of a law school, or anybody affiliated with law school education, do better. And like, if your school has programs in place to help students with mental health, good for you. Like, keep it up, spread the word, help other schools develop those type programs. If you don't, please consider implementing some kind of program like that at your school, because you're talking about people's lives and you're talking about very real things. It's not just about trying to train somebody on how to be a lawyer as far as handling cases. It's about training people on how to be a lawyer with helping clients, but also maintaining themselves in a way that they remain healthy so that they can effectively help their clients.
You know me, I wasn't going to get through an entire talk without talking some sports in some way, shape, or form. So the analogy that I draw to this is obviously, when we participate in a sport, I don't know, baseball perhaps, that, obviously you've got to take a lot of batting practice. You've got to work on how you catch a ground ball. You've got to work on your pitching mechanics. All of those things. And I think that youth sports is starting to catch on to this a little bit. My sister's actually a sports psychologist. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that there is a significant side of being a
I should have had her on instead of you.
Hey, there's always next time. There's always next time. That we're starting to see that the best athletes, the people who are most successful, are those that don't focus solely on the physical attributes that are required to be successful. They look at both of them, and I think that the same thing is true for lawyers and the legal schooling that we go through, training that we get. Is law school is sort of like the batting practice and the catching ground balls and the pitching mechanics, and I struggle to see where there's a whole lot, if any, in most law schools to just make it a part of the routine of the training. Like I said, like I talked about earlier, we frame it in a way that we call it the mental health program. Well, just instinctually in our communities, culturally, there's a negative connotation to that.
Yep.
The more that we can envelop the entirety of the training to include the mental health aspects, as if it's just like learning how to read the case law and how to make an argument. I think that all lawyers in the legal profession in general would be better, and our clients would be better served.
Yeah, it's as important, if not more important, to the integrity of the legal profession and to the health and of the lawyers' lives as well as their clients' lives. I want to talk about a few things and address this directly to lawyers. We get it. Like, we struggle with the same stressors to some extent that every lawyer is going to deal with. Now, we are partners in different personal injury firms, but we've also been associates. And I've never worked in a big law environment in a 500 lawyer law firm or whatever, and I know that there's different stressors there. But one thing I want to talk about is there was a study that Law.com and ALM did this year in 2023, and some of the statistics are just mind-blowing, and I understand why they are, but let me just go through some of these statistics with you. Their study went through 3,000 lawyers, and 38% of those lawyers reported depression, 50% reported self-doubt and increased negative worldly outlook and decreased satisfaction with their personal lives. 76% blamed their work environment. 68% blamed billable hour pressures. 67% blamed the inability to disconnect their work life from their home life. And 54% blamed lack of sleep. So a lot of that, I believe, Chase, has to do with stressors from worrying about, are we good enough? Worrying about, are we serving our clients well enough? Are we serving our partners well enough? Are we financially secure? What's our futures look like? Are we going to win this case? Are we doing the best we can for our client? How do our clients feel about us? And all of that, and then balancing that with our specific unique circumstances at home, whether you're married with a husband or wife and kids, or whether you're single and you're trying to build your personal life, whatever it happens to be, there's all these different stressors that come in because, like it or not, most people, unless you're maybe an adoption lawyer, are not coming to see you unless they have a problem. Something bad has happened, or they're about to step into something bad. They've been arrested, they're going through a divorce, they've been in a car wreck, a doctor's committed malpractice and hurt them badly, or whatever it happens to be. The IRS is coming after them. I mean, it's a litany of things that can happen. So we're kind of bringing on our clients' problems and helping them try to fix it, while also trying to balance problems that we may be having in our own life, or trying to remain healthy there. So we see it, like we could give specific examples. There was a lawyer here in Cobb County where our offices are that literally, I don't know the backstory behind it, but he fell into some bad drug problems, started funneling money, ended up getting arrested for it, ended up murdering his mother because of it, fled, just horrible things. We see it all the time where lawyers they commit suicide, they fall into substance abuse issues because they don't, for whatever reason, they haven't dealt with those stressors in a healthy way. And so can you kind of go through for us, and for any lawyers that may be struggling with this, like things that you do in your own life to help deal with the stressors of helping other people solve their problems, as well as balancing, a healthy family life behind the scenes?
Sure. I think that it's imperative that the lawyers be aware as they're getting into the work to make good choices. Because one of the ways that, at least for me, and maybe you've experienced the same thing, I know that plenty of other lawyers have experienced the same thing, in the desperate attempt, especially in small firms like ours, to continue to keep the lights on and paying all the bills and everything, that we can get to where we start taking on cases and ballooning a little bit larger than we're really comfortable taking on.
Yeah.
And in the moment, that may not seem like a big deal, but a few months down the road, or maybe even a few years down the road, as maybe cases linger around in litigation or things like that, then if you're not structurally set up to be able to handle that volume, or you don't have the appropriate staffing to deal with that, then that's ultimately all. I mean, what do we say? The buck stops with us, right?
Yeah.
And that ultimately is going to come back and fall back on us. So I think that first of all, we've got to make good choices about the way we set up our businesses, our firms, and the work that we take on. The second thing is, I think that we owe it to our clients to be the best version of ourselves that we can be when we're representing them. You mentioned earlier, we take on, and I think that it's very true for many other practice areas, not necessarily all, but most other practice areas. We're talking about representing an individual or maybe a company and the company is sort of a facade for some other individuals who are relying on us to help them work through a problem. Mm-hmm. And that problem is probably one of the single biggest challenges that they have faced recently or may face their entire lives. Yeah. And if we can't bring our best selves to help them, both physically and mentally, and again, I'm putting those two things, I think, together.
Yeah, they're definitely interrelated.
Absolutely. Yeah. That we've got a responsibility to them to make sure that we're the best version of ourselves. A couple of the ways that I do that, in addition to, like I said, making good choices on the at the beginning, at the outset of cases, in what we take on and what we don't, is making sure that I set aside time to separate from those things, mm-hmm. to separate from my work. And sometimes I saw a video that you put up the other day about being available on the weekends and all that. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that means that we can only do things to help our clients between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. But I think for us, designating specific times and sticking to that, to be with our families, mm-hmm. For those of us who enjoy it, to be by ourselves. Mm-hmm. I enjoy a good hike. And maybe taking my dog along with me. Not that I don't enjoy going with other folks. Yeah. You and I have been backpacking before.
We'll throw a picture up on the video of that, of where he drugged me for like 30 miles through the AT. It was a good time, but you're right, like that was very, we didn't even have cell signal most of the time, and so we were able to completely disconnect and just, kind of clear our brains.
Right. And so I think just being able to establish a routine is beneficial, whether it's your morning walk, or if you like going to the gym, or even if it's something just as it maybe doesn't have to be physical at all. It could be setting aside some time to have some quiet time by yourself with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in the morning. Or for some people, you're a night owl like me, then you like to have a little time to yourself where you're not working and you're not necessarily interacting with others, that you can kind of take to center yourself back again.
Yeah. A lot of my coping mechanisms, if you will, are similar to yours. I have found over the years that when I take care of myself physically, not to the point where I'm like stressing about being physically fit, but to where I'm just trying to get some moderate exercise in, to try to eat reasonably healthy with a big bowl of ice cream dosed in there every now and then. That helps with my mental clarity a lot. And then I'm definitely, it's weird because like we do these YouTube videos, I try cases, I talk to other lawyers, and we go to a lot of the same bar association groups and all that, and you're interacting with people all the time. But like naturally, I'm an introvert. I feel like it takes a lot more energy for me to interact with somebody, especially about somebody else's challenges or problems that they're facing, that it just exhausts me. So at the end of the day, like, I'm mentally drained, like when it's time to go home, but I have to have that energy for my kids and my wife and my family. And so what I found is that I found a gym that I go to. It's like a structured class, which is 45 minutes. I go in there, and then I become physically exhausted, but it recharges me mentally. So I'm able to give myself in my family what they need from an emotional perspective. But I need that time away, and so for me, sometimes that involves standing on a river or being in a boat or sitting in a deer stand hunting or whatever, regardless of how big the fish is or how many deer walk out, just like being out there in solitude and in nature just to kind of gather my thoughts, which I think was one reason that hiking appeals to you so much and that I enjoyed it so much when we went, is because it gives us that opportunity to have a healthy release. But it's so easy to fall into unhealthy ways to deal with it, by whether it's food or self-harm or alcohol or drug addiction or gambling or whatever. I mean, God knows, you can go to Netflix nowadays and see more substances that people get addicted to and that harm their bodies than I can ever count. I'm sure there'll be 50 more in the next 50 years that are just as bad of a problem, but it's easy to take that quick fix because a lot of us are not trained and not educated enough, like through our professional careers, on how to deal with those stresses. So I guess the biggest point is that it's so important to try to be proactive about maintaining your mental health, because it will dramatically improve not only your professional life and your personal life, but also your clients' lives. But
I have one more I want to throw in for you.
Go for it.
This is again that mixture between physical and mental well-being is the importance of sleep. Mm-hmm. You mentioned in the survey the number of those lawyers who reported a lack of sleep as contributing to some of their mental health challenges, and I think that it's something that is probably cultural. As Americans and as lawyers in America. I think that the mantra sort of becomes, hey, get all of the work done. If that means you have to pull an all-nighter, if that means you have to stay up late, if that means you have to be up super early, that not only are you maybe taking away from other activities and time with your family and things like that, but there's such an amazing, there's so many studies out there, and again, I'm not a medical professional, but there's so many wonderful studies out there talking about how important getting good quality consistent sleep is. And sometimes that's a little bit cyclical, right? Because the type of work that we do makes it hard for us to get sleep. We want
to shut off.
Right, we want to, but it's hard to get the sleep. And so just like these other things, these other mechanisms that we've talked about, I think that it's important for everybody to find the ways that can help them get good rest, and take some time to study that for yourself. Read some of the research and the different ways that people have found to be able to go to sleep easier, get better sleep. Because again, just like going to the gym or taking that hike and making sure that we're physically fit, getting the sleep makes such a difference. We've even seen in our practices where we've seen where people have gotten hurt because someone else wasn't getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
That's a whole epidemic in the medical academia. That you talk about medical students not getting enough sleep during the course of their training. So that's just one of the other components I would just make sure that everybody really takes to heart and finds what works for them.
Yeah, and it's just another step of trying to be proactive as best you can. Now, being proactive is very important, but nobody's perfect, and sometimes even if you are proactive, or if you've passed that point and you've gotten to a point where you're thinking about harming yourself, or you find yourself spiraling through substance abuse or something like that, there are most bar associations, and I know Georgia has a very good program where you can actually get professional help that's confidential. Nobody else outside of the people that are helping you through this are going to help, are going to know about it unless you want them to know about it. And you can reach out and find those programs if you need help taking that first step. And I promise you, no matter what it is, whether it's thoughts of self-harm or alcohol abuse or some other substance abuse, there are other lawyers in this profession that have dealt with the same thing that you're dealing with right now. So you can find that support group, because it seems to be a lot more palatable and helpful when somebody knows, hey, I'm not alone in this. Somebody else has gone through this, and I can share my experiences with them, and then also get the professional help. But just a simple Google search for the State Bar Georgia Lawyer Wellness Program will bring up a ton of resources and outlets that you can get that professional help. And if you find yourself in that situation where you're not able to serve yourself, your family, or your clients like you know you are capable of because of those mental health issues, we just highly encourage you to reach out to them. If you're not quite ready to make that step, if you just need somebody to talk to, I can tell you right now, just call me. Like, I'm more than happy to talk you through it. If you, like I do for my clients sometimes, just listen. If you just need somebody to talk to and listen and work through it, then I'm here. I'm not charging you money to do that, you know, and I'm sure Chase is the same way.
Absolutely.
We want to see our peers and our fellow lawyers thrive, and we want to see them do a good job for their clients. So reach out to us if you need to, or if you just want to. Grab a bite of lunch or dinner or something like that. But yeah.
To piggyback on that last thing for you, I think that also we have a responsibility to watch out for these kinds of things with our colleagues. Yeah. You know, sometimes it can just feel like an insurmountable challenge. Mm-hmm. The idea of someone recognizing something going on and admitting that to themselves. Yeah. And to the point that they are willing to you know, reach out to someone at the state bar, or to their own family doctor or something like that. And so I think that we as lawyers, being responsible for our own in so many ways, I think it includes just being aware of the things that our colleagues and our friends are going through. And so the good old go to lunch and check in on somebody, or give somebody a call on your way home just to check in on them, see how they're doing, and if you can tell that they're not doing well, then following up on that and help shine a light on those things, not to be rude or to prying into anybody's personal lives, but more out of concern, and letting them know that you care about them and that you want the best for them.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what people need, just to know that somebody else cares. Yeah, so I think we've been going for a while now, so we're gonna try to go ahead and wrap this up. But I would encourage you, I'm gonna give a little plug to Chase over here. Not only because he's a good lawyer, but he's a good person, and his heart's in the right place when it comes to serving his clients and serving his community. So if you have been in a situation where you need a personal injury lawyer, then you can Google Jones & Swanson, or what's the best phone number for them to reach your firm at?
Sure, it's our office number is 770-427-5498.
And if you call and mention that you saw him on our YouTube channel, it would give you a 95% discount. I'm just kidding. No, but he's really a good person and a good lawyer, and so is his law partner Andrew Jones, and they've got a great staff and good thing going over there, and they treat you right. So just like we try to do at our law firm, but we're very like-minded, and so reach out to him if you need some help with car wrecks or falls or any kind of personal situation. But we hope that this video has been helpful to you. We hope that it has pointed you in the right direction for some resources, if nothing else, to help you understand that mental health is so important, and it's not a sign of weakness if you're struggling with that. And it's certainly not a sign of weakness if you want to be proactive to guard against falling into more severe issues. But if the video has been helpful to you, give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, I will see you next week with the less attractive Chase Elleby here in Swanson, C. Thanks for joining us.